LEGO has finally revealed the new $1,000 UCS Death Star. It's an interesting set to say the least, but let's take a closer look. Starting first, I'll list all the minifigures out of the way. There's 38 of them, so I'm not going to give a big comprehensive detailed breakdown of each one, but just go through them all and then maybe a couple of the interesting ones, as well as my overall thoughts. So there are 38 in them, and starting at number 1 we have Farm Boy Luke, Stormtrooper Luke, Jedi Luke, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Stormtrooper Han, Chewbacca, Ben Kenobi, C-3PO, R2-D2, Grand Moff Tarkin, Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, Semalu, Wolf Yularen, Admiral Motti, General Tag, Director Krennic, Galen Erso, RA-7, 6 Stormtroopers, 2 Imperial Gunners, 2 Imperial Technicians, 2 Death Star Troopers, 2 Shuttle Pilots, 2 Red Guards, R3-T6, and finally the Hot Tub Stormtrooper. These 38 as a whole are pretty good. Some more interesting than others, but a solid lineup overall. However, I do still kind of feel like something's missing. I'll get into that more in a second. As far as standouts from the set though, Director Krennic and Galen Erso are the first 2 that come to my mind. They might not fit on board at all, or really that well, but they were critical pieces in constructing the Death Star, so it's a neat add-on. Wolf Yularen was a good pick too. He's a bit of a niche character, but has a pretty good following still. This Semalu character is a weird one, but I like it. I don't even know if I'm saying that name right, and I don't really ever even remember seeing this character in the movies. Maybe once. But in a $1,000 set, I would like to see more characters like this. More niche characters that we don't see of otherwise. Finally though, the best figure is easily the Hot Tub Stormtrooper. Such a great tie-in and joke from the Complete Saga video game. It's just a really big bummer that this trooper is going to be hidden behind a $1,000 paywall. Not a bad lineup at all. The big names were all hit, but yet I do still feel like it wasn't quite enough. Part of that is the price tag. This lineup is fairly similar to the old Death Star, only with more troopers and a couple more officers. There are a few new ones, but it doesn't quite feel like enough to me. Honestly though, the bigger issue for me is the quality of the minifigures in this set. It's a $1,000 UCS set. Why these minifigures aren't that detailed is really discouraging to me. These guys should have dual molded legs, printed arms. Not saying every character has to have all 3 of those, but you get the idea. In this set, almost none of these characters have any of that. If this exact lineup had better detailing like I just mentioned, my complaints would probably largely go away. There's just a distinct lack of detail for these figures, and for $1,000, I can't believe this is what they look like. However, now let's move on to this build. First off, I have to say it's pretty disappointing. This take on the Death Star was a huge surprise. Personally, I do like the idea, but not for this $1,000 set. In general, making something that feels worth $1,000 is going to be a challenge, and truthfully, I don't even know if it was possible for LEGO to meet those expectations. However, this was an extremely poor attempt. The only way I saw this set having any success was being a fully paneled Death Star with only a few pieces on the outside being removed to display a few rooms in the interior, focusing on only the most important scenes. This set, however, you can tell it was kind of scrounging in some areas to try and fill that space in the inside. It definitely feels like they thought of the idea of a $1,000 Death Star and then tried to find a way to meet that $1,000 requirement, as there's a lot of dead space and there's some rooms that just, you can tell were kind of just thrown in or squished together. But let's take a look at all these rooms. So top left we have the big laser on the outside, which has never looked better. The pieces used for that are astounding, and the laser looks beautiful. The transition from that outside laser to the inside is seamless, and the operators for this weapon look so cool inside. The detail on this part of the build is not missing at all. This big laser was a big part of the set, and they knew that, so they landed this part pretty well. And I do really like this room. On the right is the Emperor's Throne Room, which is essentially just a carbon copy of the diorama set they released from a couple of years ago. Which isn't a bad thing, that was a great set, but it does feel a little weird, as it's really the only scene not from A New Hope. I suppose with the shuttle in the hangar bay, You could also recreate the scene of Luke and Vader's escape from the second Death Star or the Emperor's arrival, but I honestly would have been fine without this area, especially to keep the price down. The throne room looks great, but we already had that diorama from a couple years ago, and it just doesn't fit amidst all these other scenes that are from A New Hope. Below that are 3 small rooms on the right side of the Death Star. The top is the conference room we see in A New Hope, which is the perfect size of room I'd want for that. I like it as a little nod, but it doesn't need to be a very big room. It's just a conference room, nothing too fun or crazy, but a nice space to have. The middle is Vader's meditation chamber, which is another repeat diorama, but just adapted into the set. This room definitely feels tacked on and kind of a way to fill space. We never saw him use this on the actual Death Star, only on the Imperial Star Destroyer. So having it included here is okay, I guess, but it just doesn't really fit. However, below that is one of my favorite rooms. It's the small control room for the hangar bay. The red and black have a good contrast, and it's a very fun scene. R2 and C-3PO setup in there look great, and I can just hear their bickering from that scene. It's a great little piece, especially because it transitions right over to the hangar bay, which, as I already mentioned, has a small Imperial shuttle. And again, this set would have been much better if they just committed to the first Death Star. The Imperial shuttle's fine, but a smaller Falcon would have been way cooler to see in there. Not to mention it just fit the set more. I do, however, love the starry background, which reminds me of the old originals with the painted backdrops. It fits in perfectly and has that kind of cute Lego charm to it as well. Above the hangar bay is the iconic room where Luke and Leia swing over the chasm in their escape. It's also combined with Obi-Wan shutting off the tractor beam. The room in general looks fantastic, but I can't help but feel it's too crammed with both these scenes playing out at one time. Which is weird to say, as this set's so big you'd think there's plenty of space. Don't know why they had to smush those two together. Not going to say it's terrible, but it definitely feels like there's too much going on. To the far left of the build is the prison block, which is one of my personal favorite scenes. They did a good job with it, even if it does feel a little cramped. I especially though love how it's connected to the elevator, just like the movie, so you can replay out that whole scene from start to finish. One thing I do hope though is that this room actually connects to the trash compactor room a couple down. I'll get to that in a second, but before I get down there, right below that room is an Imperial hallway with that iconic wall paneling. This room, while kind of basic, I think was a good choice to include. It's a funny scene and works great in Lego. Not to mention the hallway in general, you could set up so many different scenes in, as it's kind of just a generic hallway. One complaint I have though is it should be connected to the hangar bay, as that's where Han chases them to and then turns around. So why this wasn't flipped with the trash compactor is really interesting to me. So like I was mentioning, the trash compactor is below this one, so it's a full level below the prison. Hopefully there's still a feature that you can like throw them down the chute and they end up in the trash compactor. And if it's not, it definitely should have been included. Either way, I think it should be right under the prison cell, no matter what. That just makes more sense. Those scenes are obviously connected and go right after the other. And with that, that's every room covered except the big elevator shaft down the middle. This one in the very center of the sphere in particular is way off for almost no reason. Also towards the top, it doesn't connect to any rooms and just feels like dead space. In general, while I like the inclusion of an elevator, especially if it would actually work, this one just feels disjointed and it's not really connected to too many of the rooms. Last thing, I guess I'll touch on the exterior really quick before I move on. None of it's particularly exciting besides the laser. That piece is really good, but besides that, nothing jumps out at me. I mean, there's some greebilling details around that look good, but nothing crazy. The gift with purchase is a pretty big letdown. I think either way they went with this though, they were going to be shooting themselves in the foot, because the way they went here, it's a pretty bad gift with purchase. It looks like a 4+ set. Doesn't really add any characters to the build at all. On the other hand, if they went really big and grand and something with unique minifigures, people probably would have complained. So I see the dilemma there, but I also think maybe the hot tub stormtroopers should have been the gift with purchase. Him, a hot tub, and maybe a couple other minifigures to put in there. That'd have been fun and a good gift with purchase, I think. As what they delivered just doesn't seem to be a worthwhile add-on, and if anything, it feels like it should have been included in the set to start with. So overall, this set just takes a completely different approach, and it essentially just becomes a very big and expensive collection of dioramas. There's about 10 rooms you could count as dioramas. They range in shape, but you end up with about 10 dioramas for $80 each. and if you include a $200 border. All of it's well done, but I just can't justify it. It doesn't seem worth that price. It feels like it should have been at a greater discount, and it's basically just a diorama set combo. Not to discount the build too much though, as again, it is a neat concept, just not $1,000 neat. A smaller version of this, only with the important Death Star 1 rooms, would have been much more appealing, especially more at like a $400 price range. In general though, the price tag just made this set's expectations way too high, especially from the fans. And honestly, I don't know if any build could have lived up to our expectations, but this one certainly didn't. This was a very poor attempt from LEGO. But now I want to know what you're all thinking about this set too. Is it worth the price? Is anyone going to actually buy it? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Like and subscribe for more. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.